just about 6:30. I'd like to thank everyone for coming. It's really appreciated. It's always dicey. You never know how many people are going to show up for this event. We were having a conversation earlier. 3 years ago, there were about 15 people here when Kim gave her State of the Schools address. Last year, there was probably about 120. We had kind of a spirited conversation about the high school, but we'll address that in our slides. So thank you very much. It's good to see so many familiar faces. I appreciate it. We'll give as much time as we need to also talk about the slides, but to also spend some time after. Kara Morrow, our assistant superintendent, is going to come up when we get done our slide presentation, and we'll be here to answer any questions that you might have that haven't been addressed in our presentation. So this is my second State of the Schools address as superintendent, and also the budget update. And so this is something that we hope to use annually to give an update around where we are in our budget planning, and also to update you in regard to where we are with our district strategy. So again, thank you for coming. So the objectives for this evening are to share the FY21 budget timeline and the work that we've done around that, to present our mid-year update on our instructional strategy, and where we think that that's been really effective, and also to talk a little bit tonight about where we'd like to expand not only our instructional strategy, but our district strategy to include more data to tell the story about the work that we're doing at the schools, and also to discuss emerging priorities in the budget process. So the FY21 budget. So the budget is a process, but there are also some guiding kind of parts and kind of philosophies that we try to adhere to in creating the budget for the Wakefield Public Schools. So the first thing that we want people to know and to realize, people don't always realize that we have, our budget last year was just about $42 million. But with that budget, we're serving a staff of 567 people in 7 bargaining units that are working to educate 3,510 students in 8 schools, right? And so, when you think of it in that context, you realize that it's not just a few people getting all of that budget. We're actually doing quite a bit with the $42 million budget. We're pleased to have the support of the community, and we take this very seriously. So the budget will also be driven by our instructional strategy. These are kind of standards, and it's the framework that we use to create the budget. And I'll talk more about that as we go through our slides. It's also going to be driven by our core values. So back in November, the school committee, myself, participated in the tri-board meeting here on this stage. We had FinCom and Town Council here. And one of the slides in talking about the budget was that, our values, our budget will reflect our values. When we talk about that on the school side, we talk about our core values. So, and we try to think about making value-based decisions that are not short-term decisions, but are longer-term decisions. We want to do things that are fiscally responsible, that are going to pay a dividend and a value to the community and to our schools and to our educators over time, and especially to our students and families. As part of the budget process, it's critical for us to include voices of all of the stakeholders. That includes students, parents, families, as well as faculty and staff. We want the budget to support what the Wakefield Public School needs to continue on its trajectory to excellence. We also, and this last bullet is critically important to us, to all of us. We feel like we've been given a lot of responsibility and a lot of support from the community. We want to create budgets that are fiscally responsible and sustainable, right? And I think at this point it'd be important for me to say that we are still working, and one of the drivers in our budget, and I'll say a little bit more about this as we go through our slides, but we also want to create a budget that honors the work of teachers and how that work is changing, right? And so we have yet to settle the teacher contract, and the teacher contract is, while we're in negotiations, it's not subject to public commentary, so I can't comment on the process, but I can say, I think I speak for the teachers when I say that it's really critically important that you know how much their work is changing and how much work that they're doing before school, after school, evenings, and also how the needs of our students are changing, and that is also changing the dynamics in their classroom and the work that they're doing not only in class but outside of class as well. So the budget timeline. This is our fiscal year 21 budget timeline. So it really starts in October. And so this year, on November 12th, we reviewed and prioritized capital requests with school committee. We submitted capital requests to DPW. One of the things that I'm particularly proud of is the collaborative work that we're doing, not only committee to committee, town council, school committee, and FinCom, but also with individuals. So our capital request list was created by our new Director of Facilities, Bob Shiroli, and he's worked collaboratively with the new Director of the DPW, Joe Conway. And they've done a great job together in prioritizing and really figuring out how we can support one another with the capital budget that we have. You know, the requests that come in far exceed the budget, but it takes some flexibility to work through that and prioritizing and how we do that, and I think how Joe and Bob do that is really exceptional. From October to December, myself and Kara Morrow have gotten around to every school. We have sat with teachers, faculty, and staff, and we've asked them, how is your work going? What do you feel like your students need? What's missing? What are priorities from your perspective, through your lens? What do you see as priorities? And they provide us feedback. And we take those notes one for one. And we compile all of them from each school. And we go through and we look for patterns, we look for themes, and we look at what is emerging for priorities within the budget based on their feedback. We also have coffee feedback sessions with parents at each school. So I had a coffee feedback session at the high school, I had a coffee feedback session for elementary parents. The one that we had scheduled here for Galvin needed to be rescheduled because of weather, but that will be happening in the coming weeks. So additionally, on December 17th and on December 19th, all of our principals in the budget process, they do this annually, and our directors of all of our departments, they're given a budget packet. And in that packet, it lists the number of students they have in their schools, and it's a list of their entire faculty, and as well as their budget expenditures, right? And so what we ask them to do is to go through this with a fine-tooth comb to really give some thought to how we can do, how we might be able to reallocate or do more with the money that we have. Not additional monies, with the money that we have. And when I get to emerging needs, I'll talk a little bit more about the support that we got last year in the budget and how we added direct service into the classrooms. We added the number of counselors in last year's budget. Half of those positions that were added last year were not additional costs to the budget. They were positions that we moved school to school. And that's an example or a fundamental part of what we do when we reallocate resources. So principals are asked to do that, and they present their budgets, and they have to make a case for what they need. They can't make a blind ask. They need to substantiate what they need and why they need it. And so we had the kind of budget summit. It's an open meeting. Members of school committee were present, and I think it was a very productive meeting. And so I'll talk more about that when we get to emerging priorities. In January, we'll continue to do staff and community forums. This evening, State of the School address. And next week, we're going to we have an annual budget survey that we will get out to members of the community. Additionally, we've surveyed parents through the Student Services Subcommittee. We've surveyed parents, students, and teachers in grades 5 and in grades 9 to really focus in on the transition years. So what happens when students move from grade 4 to 5? You know, what are we doing well? What do we need to think about? And that we're collecting data, and we're trying to triangulate that data from multiple sources to really be thoughtful about how we're prioritizing resources for students as they move from school to school and level to level. So in February 13th, I will do an overview for FinCom. I'm doing 2 presentations for FinCom this year. On February 25th, the plan is for us to present the recommended budget to school committee. And then from March through May, there'll be a public hearing with a school committee vote, and the budget will be presented to town council and to FinCom. And then there'll be a vote at town meeting. So that's kind of the entire calendar mapped out. So more to follow on that. So our instructional strategy. Our instructional strategy is a one-page strategy. It's really hard to write a strategy for a district or for your work and make it one page. Every word and the structure of the document is really highly scrutinized by everyone that looks at it, right? And so I'm super pleased and proud of the document that we've created. We see this document everywhere. A young family looking at a house shared with us that, oh, I saw that in the realtor's binder in an open house. So I thought, good, you know, because part of buying into our community is buying into our school system. So I'm pleased to hear that. But the instructional strategy, which the school committee votes on, is devised. It starts off with the vision, which is the Wakefield Public Schools graduates confident, lifelong learners who are respectful and caring members of their communities. Our mission is to prepare students for college, career, community by providing rich and challenging curriculum, high quality instruction, and educational experience that meet their individual needs and interests. So there are 3 parts to the instructional strategy, and there are technical initiatives in each part. Instead of going through each technical initiative, I thought I could give you a summary and an overview at the bottom of each slide. And so quality teaching, part 1. So the Wakefield Public Schools will support, promote quality teaching by recruiting, retaining, and developing exemplary teachers. Our teacher corps is amazing. It's amazing. We have the highest teacher retention rate in the Middlesex League, which I'm really pleased about. 2/3 of our teaching staff have been here 12 years or more. Our most veteran staff members have been here 44 and 45 years respectively, right? And so that's some time in the classroom. That's something to be proud of. And so, but we are only as good as our ability to attract, support, and retain the teachers that are here working with children, right? And kind of what we think is that what's most critical in the course of the academic day or the school day is what happens while students are in the classroom, what happens when students are in the cafeteria, and what happens when students spend time with their peers, right? It's most critical. And during that time, teachers are in those spaces making decisions about teaching and learning, and also about what your children need. The second part of the instructional strategy is for us to provide rich and challenging curriculum. So one of the things that's unique about Wakefield, and it's not common in a lot of our surrounding districts, is we have a curriculum review and renewal cycle. So every year, a curriculum area is reviewed. We go through it soup to nuts. We have our assistant superintendent that leads this work with curriculum coordination or coordinators in all of our content areas. And we look at the materials that people are using. We look at how current they are. We look that they're accessible and free of bias. And we want to make sure that those materials are prompts to create learning experiences for kids to create the outcomes that we most want to see. So it's a fundamental part of our work annually, and it relates directly back to what teachers, to priority one or part one of the instructional strategy. Part three, individualized student learning. You know, one of the things that's critical is for us to get to know and learn about your children, to learn about who they are as students, what their needs are, and how we can accommodate them to develop and grow, not only as students, but as people as well. So to do that, we need to understand their learning style, how they approach situations, and we also need to think about what data we're using to support practices that support equity and positive outcomes in pre-K through post, right? So that's a piece about our instructional strategy. Just moving over to facilities, because that is a part of, it's going to be a big part of our budgeting in the next couple of years, not only on the school side, but on the town side as well. And so this past year, we were fortunate to be accepted into the MSBA grant for an accelerated repair to put a new roof on the Greenwood School. This project is going to cost about $1 million. The state will fund about half of the project, which is fantastic. It's also going to give us an opportunity to update some of the facilities at Greenwood Elementary to make them ADA accessible, right? Right now, some parts of the school and some of the bathrooms are not ADA accessible. So as part of the roof project, we're going to be doing some other work that's going to increase accessibility for students. So more to follow. One of the things that I'm pleased about, and this again relates back to Bob Shiroli, is that, you know, when we do this work with MSBA, they give you a timeline. They'll say conservatively, you can do this work in 3 years. But if you wanted to accelerate it, and if you meet all benchmarks, you could probably get it done in a year and a half or 2 years. And so we've done everything to accelerate this project, and we're going to come in the 2-year window. So the work is going to be done this summer on the Greenwood School, which we're really pleased about, because to be honest, the roof is ready. And you know, the leaks and have interrupted teaching and learning, so we're ready. So we're pleased about that. So good news, last year we had a bit of a spirited conversation. Mr. Renzi, you were here. We had a bit of a spirited conversation about the high school. And you know, one of the questions was, what happens if we're not accepted into the grants? Well, what a difference a year makes. In December, Wakefield was accepted into the grant, the eligibility phase, to start really investigating what options or opportunities can we create for Wakefield Memorial High School, right? And so we're only in Module 1. I don't know if you had a chance to see school committee last night, but Bob Shiroli did a great job just talking about Module 1. So Module 1 starts April 1st. There's a 270-day window for us to get kind of a lot of work in place to really demonstrate to MSBA that we as a school district and we as a community are prepared to participate in this grant. And it's our understanding at this point in time, the percentage hasn't been determined, but the project could be funded on the state side up to about 50%. And I say up to, because we still have to work on that. A question that we often get, and I feel like it's prudent to address it here, that we often get about the high school is our NEASC accreditation, the New England Association of Schools and Colleges that accredits our school. So the school was moved to probation, right? And so a lot of parents heard this. They said, well, what does it mean? Does it mean that my son or daughter will have difficulty getting into a college? Does it mean our school's going to have a bad reputation? Does it mean that we're going to lose our accreditation? And so in preparation for tonight, I had a conversation with NEASC, and NEASC was very clear with me. They said, you know, you need to convey to your community under no terms is the high school going to lose its accreditation. In fact, the board vote stated that the high school will continue to be accredited, but it is on probation for the facility. So their problem, they have a number of standards that can relate to classroom sizes, that can relate to a number of things, that can relate to professional development offerings, that can relate to curriculum. There's no questions, they have no questions. We've met every criteria around creating the learning environment, creating a professional development plan, both at the district and the school level to support teachers, and also to support what's happening there, or not only professional development, but curriculum as well. But the only thing that we're on probation for is the facility. So the district and the school is and maintains its accreditation. I don't know if anyone has any questions about that, because I feel like we always get questions about that. No? Okay. So special education. We've done a lot of work in a short amount of time that has really focused on special education. Special education costs are rising, and they're a driver, a cost driver in any budget. So we'll always get questions. You know, members of FinCom will ask us, how's the budget looking? And what's going on in special education? Those are like the questions 1 and 1. And we always get questions around, have you all considered, or is it part of your planning to really think about how best to support students in district? And the answer to that question is always. So one of the things that we continue to develop to support is in-district programming to support all learners, right? So if a student needs a program and the choice is for the student to go out of district to be educated at another place or another school, one of the things that we do is we work very closely with Lynn O'Neill, our director, and we start to plan and say, can we create this in district? What do we have? How do we make it work? Can we do it in a cost-effective way that will support a student over the course of their education? And I think we've been very, very effective in doing this. So the district is also proposing in this budget an expansion of program options and flexibility at the elementary and middle school levels. We're looking to increase opportunities for language-based programming, as well as social communication support at the elementary and middle levels. The district will also develop program descriptions and continuously evaluate service delivery models. Are we getting what we need from what we're planning or our programs? And we'll also look at scheduling. Are we grouping and scheduling kids in effective ways to best support them? And to make this work, we need to, which goes back to the quality teaching piece, we need to provide professional development opportunities for our teachers to learn and get the skills and experiences they need to best support students and their emerging needs in the classroom. So in the next 2 slides, you'll see, considerations for the Wakefield Public Schools, the long view. We're not trying just to plan one budget. We're trying to plan one budget that can lead to another budget, that can lead to another budget, right? We're trying to plan in ways that are smart, that won't create a situation where we have to undo something that we've started, right? The budget is grounded in, again, the instructional strategy, but these are some bullets that I shared back in November at our tri-board meeting, right? And so we need to, and we are committed to collaborating with town leaders to create a long-term facilities master plan. Like, what is the 7 to 10-year plan? What is the view? We are committed to create a data and a budget plan to accommodate learning-ready facilities, including a new high school, right? We're in the chute. We know that we need to commit ourselves to getting a new high school. And I also put on here a renovated Greenwood Elementary School. For the budget that we used to renovate and add on to the Walton School, that was actually done very smartly. The timing was good, and it was done well in regard to the budget. So we're thinking about, could we do the same thing with Greenwood? We know that the school needs a lot in regard to facilities. It's an older building. It's held up remarkably well, but it's time where we really need to think about a longer-term plan about renovating and possibly adding on, depending on our enrollment needs in the district, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. So, but again, if this is a 10-year snapshot, we're not looking to jump the line. We're not looking to prioritize the Greenwood maybe over the safety building. We know that so go the schools, so go the town, and vice versa. So we also know that we need to complete an enrollment study with all the new construction happening in town, right? So we need to pay attention. I mentioned this when I spoke about special education. We need to pay attention to special education costs and programming. We need to think about the changing population of students that we have in the Wakefield Public Schools. I spoke a little bit about this in November, right? Our number of students whose first language is not English is steadily increasing. We have changed the service model that we provide to support English language support in the schools. When I arrived here, all of the students at the elementary level that needed ESL support went to the Woodville School. And it seems like an efficient way to do it, but really what it was doing is it was putting kids at a disadvantage. It took kids away from their peers. It took kids away from their neighborhoods. And so, especially at a young age, are we okay there? Thanks. Didn't know if I was getting the hook. So, what's that? Thanks. So when we were, the program would take our ESL kids, and one of the changes that we made, it might seem like a small change, but it made a tremendous difference for families and for students. We allowed students whose first language was not English to attend their home elementary school. And when we did that, we saw their social language skills and their social interaction increase proportionally, right? So students would develop friendships more quickly. They would learn the English language more quickly. And you know, often our perspective or our view of students coming in that are quote unquote English language learners is they're not all traditional English language learners. We have a number of students that have come into the district who speak 2 or 3 languages. Their first 2 or 3 just happen not to be English. They may have been educated in Europe. Their parents have traveled around and they chose to move to Wakefield. So they're jumping in and they're figuring out and they're thriving as well. I'll talk a little bit about how we're supporting those students when I talk about emerging needs. But I guess the point that I hope that you can take away is the students that are coming to Wakefield are changing, right? The demographic is changing. The other part, and I talked about this in November, the other part that is important to consider is the greatest diversity that we have in this district is socioeconomic diversity. We have about 550 students on free and reduced lunch. We have about 500 students that are also considered economically disadvantaged and are part of a subgroup as part of our 3,500 students. So that's something that affects us and our ability to meet the needs of students. When students don't have what other students have in terms of life experiences, we need to think about how to provide equitable experiences in school to kind of help students get up to speed and to be able to learn and achieve with their peers. So other things that we're working on. We need to increase our computer science offerings at the high school level and also our STEM offerings in our fields district-wide. It's something that's a critical need for the job market. It's something that's a critical need in Massachusetts, and we would be remiss if we weren't really working hard to try to prepare students to meet that need. Amy McLeod and her admin team is thinking a lot about how to present and increase opportunities for early college experiences. You know, we're in a funny time and place with college. Some small colleges are closing, where others are thriving. The cost of college it's exorbitant. You know, no one, I don't think, could have predicted the changes that have come so quickly in regard to college costs and college acceptances. But one of the questions that we're wrestling with is, how can we take students that are ready and provide them a college experience, 1 college class, 2 college classes, before they leave to go off to a college? How can we get them college credit, right? So instead of studying hard all year for an AP, they might be taking college courses and AP courses in parallel to one another. But this is something that I know Amy McLeod is passionate about, and you'll be hearing more about this, I think, in the coming year. We also need a plan to address the achievement and opportunity gaps. And I think that that comes with some of the other challenges that we have and that we've seen in the district in regard to socioeconomic need. I think that those things are real. I think we need to continue to talk about them and think about how we're going to address student needs. So as we have made our way around and have collected information so far from stakeholders, we're still not done. Again, a survey will go out next week to the community. But the emerging needs, and it's categorized in regard to quality teaching, rigorous curriculum, and individualized student learning to align with our instructional strategy. But the emerging needs are instructional time and intervention support at K4. So instructional time doesn't necessarily mean we need more minutes to instruct math or reading. I think instructional time means, and intervention support means we need time to slow down and to speed up. We need time to be able to make good decisions for our students to meet their needs. If we're working really hard on a unit and we want to take a second recess, we as elementary teachers want to be able to do that and not feel guilty about it or not feel like we're behind in a lockstep curriculum. And to be honest, the elementary teachers and our administrators at the elementary level are expert in this space, right? I think that they're more than able and ready to start to make those decisions. And I think that we need to provide that for them. And so in regard to intervention, we hear this over and over, when we have students that are behind, how can we best support them to get caught up, right? So that they don't feel like they're in a class where they're just struggling every single day, right? That really just destroys student self-esteem. They feel like they can't participate, and we're really at a disadvantage trying to connect with them after the fact. So more there. And so reading specialists, reading is, kids see more text and they're reading more things now than they ever have. It's an ongoing debate if what they're reading is, if any of it's really any good. I shouldn't say it exactly like that, but they're not reading like we used to read. They're not reading and they're not assigned, books like we were, right? Their attention spans are shorter. They consume media and they consume print media different than we do. But reading is really a critical part of our early childhood experience, pre-K2, where we need to be really considerably better than we are in that space. I think that we're good, so I don't want to paint a picture that we're not effective in that space, but we really need to really, it's an area of growth for us. So, excuse me. Science specialists. So we get some of our best ideas from teachers. We were recently talking with a teacher that said, science is a complex subject. Teacher asked, Doug, I don't know if you've seen the 4th grade standards for science. Pretty tough. And I have seen them, and they are pretty difficult. They're complex. The teacher said, it would be great if we had more support and had a specialist to help us teach science and provide experiences for kids at grades 3, 4, or grades K4. And so this is something that we're really interested in exploring, because it could also create some space for teachers to do intervention, to work with data, or to do other types of work that they need to do that they're having difficulty to get to because their day is just so full right now. So I think there's more to follow there. EI support. Again, I mentioned this in the pre-K2 window. It's early intervention is the name of the game. For students to do well in school, you got to catch them early, you got to support them well, and you got to continue to think about what they need over time. I talked, one of the emerging priorities in regard to quality teaching is an additional ESL teacher to help us provide support for our English language learners. Building substitutes. You know, the unemployment rate is just over 3%. Not only is the unemployment rate low, but the rate of pay for subs is low, so it's kind of like a perfect storm. It's not only Wakefield, but it's surrounding districts as well that are having a particularly tough time getting substitutes to come in to take classes and to kind of really be effective with students. And it's not, so, you know, one of the questions that I always get is, well, why wouldn't you just increase the pay? You know, there's been a lot of research around this, and a number of districts in the surrounding area have tried to, you know, increase the sub pay, and it hasn't changed the outcome. You know, there just is not a group of people that are sitting home waiting to make $150 or $100 a day. So we're trying to be creative and innovative in that space. I think you'll hear more about that. So MSN stands for Moderate Special Needs Teachers. As we think about expanding programming, we know that we're going to need help in this area. The Wakefield Memorial High School art program and music program, both at the high school and the middle school, are always expanding, right? This is like the juggernaut. Tom Bankert is running a department that could expand and expand and expand. He could take his whole show over to the Herd School and fill it. It's pretty impressive, but more to follow there. So in regard to rigorous curriculum, we're looking for level text for classroom libraries. We're looking for social studies materials at the K-4 level. Last year, we had a secondary buy where we had some 512 and, 512 purchases last year. We're looking and thinking about how to support the social, emotional health and learning of our students with curriculum materials. Right now, we're using the Michigan model materials in K-4, and we're using that at the middle school as well, but we're thinking more of a K-12 snapshot of wellness, what that could look like. I mentioned technology and engineering earlier. In terms of individualized student learning, we need to think as a district about intervention services and about support that we provide students and families, not only during the school day, outside of the school day, during vacations and during the summer as well. We're looking at the possibility of an English language coordinator to help coordinate services with our our English language learners. We're looking at the possibility of a service coordinator. We brought in a civics course as a new social studies curriculum, 512. Jason Pavey has done an amazing job in this space. He's developed a new civics course at grade 8, and what's coming with that is a service project. And so the possibility of kids doing community service and getting outside of school as part of their learning is related to this service coordinator position. We're looking to refine and establish data teams pre-K-12. You know, we have so much data, and we don't always package it in a way that tells the story and the good work that students and teachers are doing. That's an area for us of growth. Early college and dual enrollment, I spoke about that, as well as updating assessment and data tools so that we can communicate progress that students are making. In terms of district personnel, and this is on slide 2 for a reason, it's not just symbolic, right? What always comes first and is always a priority is direct service in the classroom. Next come kind of district priorities. But we're thinking about a humanities curriculum coordinator, which would be part of Kara Morrow's team. Kara Morrow has curriculum coordinators grades 5 through 12 and literacy coaches in K-4, and we have one STEM coordinator right now. But on the humanities side, there's a little bit of a gap, and we need some help in that area. We're thinking about an HR coordinator. We have 567 people, and we do not have a designated human resource person, which is interesting, and that's a conversation, excuse me. Digital learning, we're thinking more about that. Communications, media relations. We're launching a new website as part of our marketing and communication to the district. That will be happening in February and March. More information to follow there. That's a this year project. We're thinking about things big and small. We're talking about a traffic supervisor. We think a traffic supervisor on Hemlock and Farm would be fantastic. That's a bit of a treacherous space. And so we're also thinking about the possibility of custodial help, right? And so these are emerging needs. We know that not all of these are a first priority, and we know that we're going to need to think about this list not over 1 year, one budget cycle, but over multiple years. And I hope that that's something that you can take away this evening and just hear. Like, we're not looking at winning a big budget for 1 year. We're looking at creating sustainable budgets that the town can also endorse and that we can kind of use to grow our schools and really create great opportunities for our students. So I'd like to invite Kara to come up, and she and I think can answer any questions that you might have. If there's anything that you'd like to ask that I didn't bring up in our slide deck, I think we're open to hear whatever you have. Thanks, Bob. Amy? Yeah, I do. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. That's a great question. And so if you didn't hear, the question is, Amy's question was, have superintendents gotten together or thought about getting together to really push back on all of the state mandates, especially around testing? She mentioned grade 3, where students, it's hard for them to test online. They don't have the executive function skills, keyboarding. You didn't say keyboarding, but I'm just picking that up. But so it depends what district that you're in, right? So, we don't use state assessments in a way that is always most productive or helpful for students, okay? But it's become the currency that we trade in as a check and balance for quote unquote accountability, and it's required not only by the state but the federal government, right? And so I'm not a big fan of testing, but I do know that it's part of the currency that we trade in. And I do know that some students are able to test well, and some students are just emerging and learning the skill. And I think that where we stand, and Kara can say more about this, but I think from our perspective, we want to embrace kind of the best work that students can do, right? And then take it from there. Jeff Riley, the Commissioner of Education, was just at the high school last week. And one of the things that he's hearing loud and clear, and philosophically, he is also struggling with the amount of testing that we're doing. So I think that the state, and I think that what they're hearing, I know that they're hearing it from us, is that, we need less. And so I think that the department is trying to figure out how to do less, but also meet the federal requirements to not interrupt the financial pipeline that supports that whole accountability juggernaut. I don't know if that makes sense. So I guess in short, we want students to be able to do the best they can, and we're okay with that. We embrace it, and so.
I mean, I'll just add to that. Is this working okay? Doug and I were at the math superintendent conference last summer, and I think these issues aren't exclusive to Wakefield. I think a lot of superintendents were expressing concerned about the high rates of anxiety and social emotional needs that are getting in the way of their students' progress. So, and as Doug mentioned, Jeff Riley coming in, I do think messaging out of DESE supports the need to scale back a little bit, just in terms of the deeper learning initiative and the idea of really wanting quality over quantity. It's not just about getting kids ready for the test, check the box, move on. We're looking to see our students really sustaining the information that they're learning within the classroom. So I'm hopeful, because I don't think that I think philosophically we are on the same page, and I think, we're hearing it loud and clear from our teachers as well, all the struggles that they're facing in the classroom, and we're moving in a positive direction, I would say.
So we in no way want to add anxiety to the classroom. We want to kind of think about, okay, when we say we want teachers to be able to make decisions to meet the needs for their kids, that's not code. That is legitimately us wanting teachers to be able to care for kids and know that they have our support, if that makes sense.
And
right?
if I could, I feel like we could talk all day about this, but I just want to add one more component to that. I think the work that we're doing with the curriculum coordinators and as part of our curriculum review cycle, a lot of our professional development this year has focused on prioritizing standards. There's several standards per content area, per grade, and it would be almost impossible to try to teach to all of the standards really well. So the conversations that our coordinators are leading with our teachers at every grade level are what are the necessary skills? What's the minimum? What does every student need to know and be able to understand at the end of every grade level, so that the following grade level can pick up on that? And it's not about just using program materials page by page. It's really coming to agreement around what we want our students to know at every grade level. And that just makes the content piece of things less. We're really focusing on skill development.
Yes. I'm not sure I heard you. Could you say it again, please?
The bubble class.
Oh, yeah. It depends on the number of students. And so, I love this question. So just to let the audience know where we are. So sometimes schools will have a bubble, a large number of students, so we have to open up an additional class, right? At the large schools, at Dolbear and at Woodville, there are 4 classes per grade. But sometimes when the number goes above the number of students that we want to have in 4, we open up a 5th class, and we call that class a bubble class, right? And so Walton had a bubble class a few years ago, and other schools have had quote-unquote bubble classes as well. A question that parents have, and because we got this I got this question in our meeting when we came out to talk, and we had a coffee over at Dolbear, was, we just want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to maintain class sizes, and can we really look at that bubble class, because it's really been positive for the school. Am I missing any of this? So it's all driven by enrollment, right? And so we're looking to create equitable enrollments across the district. And if we need that, it will be in the budget. Yeah. So I also know that teacher that we hired is a star, and so it's not missed on me either. Yeah. So other questions? Yes. How's that budget looking? You did hear me say that I can't talk about negotiations? No.
So it's a giant elephant in the room that every single person here is
Okay.
about. So we're going to ignore it?
No. Please don't.
So we can say maybe what are some things that parents can do so they're not just sitting here twiddling our thumbs?
It's a great question, so let me try to answer it, right? So we are working collaboratively with the teachers to settle this budget, and to settle it in a way that we are proud of the work that we've done to address the needs that are being worked on during negotiations. It's part of our budget. So the question is, what can we do as parents? So I think my recommendation would be to support the school budget, because when we settle the contract, to support the budget will be to support the teachers and the contract that we settle on. So when we start to move to other public forums to talk about the budget and the increase that we need, I think if you could help in that space, we would welcome it. So you can call the school committee members. Parents have called me. Parents have called school committee members. Did we talk? We did. And so it's coming back to me. I appreciate the conversation. But yes, so calling is, they're only going to tell you the same thing that I'm telling you, which is the best way to support teachers is to support the budget, right? And so, and not all of our school committee members participate in the labor subcommittee, which are participating in negotiations, and that is not subject to public commentary anyway. So, but I would suggest my feedback. Yeah. Yep.
So I just want to add, I hear what you're saying. I think it's on all of our minds about the teacher negotiations too. But I live in town as well, as you know, and I hear things around town, and I think there's some misinformation potentially circulating around what this all involves. Like Doug said, we can't talk necessarily about the process, but you know, I've heard things like, are the teachers getting paid at all? Of course they are. Have they gotten a cost of living increase in the past couple of years? Yes. So there's a lot of I guess what I would say too is just in terms of information just around the current state that we are following the past contract, and we are acknowledging that every day.
Mm-hmm. I don't think anyone's uncomfortable. I think we're all working hard to create a budget that supports a new contract. So I don't think you're going to get any pushback on that from us as leaders or from the school committee members that are here. And so you're welcome to continue the conversation. I'll be happy to talk with you offline. I know we spoke once. And yeah.
Well, I think it was discussed. It was discussed at school committee last night. I know school committee member Markham put out a statement. He put it in the item today. So, I mean, I think we're trying to give, or the school committee and administration give the information that we can while being respectful of the process as well.
Andy? Sure. You know, Galvin has a rotating schedule, and you know, we have 4 ESL teachers that are working at all of our schools. So we have teachers, oh, I'm sorry, language-based, not ESL, correct? I'm sorry, my mistake. That's right. So, you know, we were talking, so language-based, so last year we prioritized an MSN to come in to really focus on language-based programming in grade 5. One of the things that we had said was a budget priority for us would be to look at the need for another FTE to kind of be a grade 6, a grade 7, and then a grade 8 to build some continuity there. One of the things that we're seeing is that the numbers are small enough where we think that the grade 5 language-based teacher can support in grades 5 and 6. But our numbers in elementary are growing, so it said I think K4 is the space where we're going to need some support, but we're also thinking about how we might be able to reconstitute some other support here as well. So more to follow on that, Andy. You're welcome. Yes? I'm not sure I heard the phrase that you used. I'm not sure what that phrase,
I mean,
student-centered
I can take a
contract
stab
means.
at just in terms of conversations I've been in. I feel like there's, just in terms of the conversations around the teachers, it's not just about money. We're very much talking about, as Doug said earlier, the changing needs within the classroom and how there's just increased diversity with regard to, our students, their academic needs. And I think a lot of, what is talked about is how can we make our classrooms as accessible for all, and how can we make support our teachers as best as we can. And oftentimes that comes down to direct service, which I think you saw in the emerging needs. A lot of, ideally, in an ideal world, there would be huge increases in terms of direct service to students. So that's my take on that comment.
And I think Kara has it. I think what they mean when they say a student-centered contract is direct service in the classroom. Yeah. 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 Yeah, we see that in our grade 5 scores. And so I'm happy to hear that you support it. I think it's something we're excited about as well. And again, I don't want to, I'll ask the teacher later if I can use her name, but that solution came from one of our teachers. I think it's actually a brilliant idea.
Because just to highly engaging science lessons, they take a lot of time to plan. They're use of a lot of materials. They're very hands-on. So, which is what we want for our students. So I feel like I love the idea as well. Yeah, I think it would be great.
Yes. So the emerging needs will be part of the survey. Yeah? I think we agree. Yeah.
So one of the things that we chipped away trying to, because you're right, it's a ton, and as we said, the science standards are involved. So as Doug mentioned earlier, this is our first year with an elementary STEM curriculum coordinator, which has been fabulous, and she's managing science and technology, as well as looking at our math curriculum as well. And one of the things she has headed up is a science leadership team. So she has reps from each of the elementary buildings who have come together, and Jennifer Thomas, who is our science curriculum coordinator 5 through 12, started this group last year. And Valerie Drynan is our elementary STEM coordinator. She's continued with it this year. So she's trying to build building-based experts to help with the work at a minimum right now. But I think having teachers that are well-versed in science would be wonderful.
Yes, sir. So it's really, there's just a list of benchmarks that we need to meet, putting together groups, assessing, kind of doing an educational survey. These are benchmarks that I met with Steve Mayo to plan this, and we've been talking about this with both the PBC and school committee. I'm not anticipating that we're going to have any issue cruising through Module 1. So, but there's just a list of benchmarks, and we put it out. It was part of the school committee meeting last night. And if you want to send me an email, I can send you the slides, which actually give you the entire list, if you're interested. Okay. Yes, sir. Correct. With the overall assessment, I'm not sure I understand your question.
To advance to the next stage, we're on probation with the facility.
Right.
Solely with the facility.
So MSBA and NEASC are two separate entities.
But do they look at it?
It's
They-
a talking point.
They do. They do. One of the big things that we kind of faced in year one of our kind of superintendencies and was kind of meeting with NEASC and talking about kind of what that means, right? And so yes, so that very much, so the fact that we went on probation actually helped our case to be accepted into the grant. And I think that we welcomed that opportunity because the need was so great. Yeah. Other questions? Yes. It is part of, we need to justify our enrollment as we lead into Module 2 and 3, which is part of the schematic design. So because there's a direct correlation between enrollment and square footage. So the short answer is yes. That, in kind of planning with Mr. Mayo, it will probably be in November. So we're not going to miss the May meeting for MSBA. We can't get done what we need to get done. We're supposed to start April 1st, right? And so April 1st to the May meeting to have the number of steps and things that we need to get done, we're not going to get that done in that amount of time. So we'll move to the fall meeting and we'll be prepared to go and really look at LPM, schematic design, et cetera, et cetera. Yes? No? Mm-hmm. Yep. I appreciate the feedback. Yes? Amy. Yep. Explanation? Yeah. Yeah, and, right. Right. Right, I think one of the reasons why we're just not pushing that list of emerging needs into the survey like we've done in years past and then just get it out to get feedback is you gave this exact same feedback last year, which it would have been nice to have more information. I think we're going to try to provide that under each topic. Now, yeah.
I don't think we have one to reference right now, but it's certainly something we could put together. I feel like we're still, a lot of the work that we're doing is team building and looking at our systems and looking at how we're using our people efficiently. And in last year's budget too, we reallocated a couple of positions, created different ones. So I feel like maybe by the end of next year we'll be ready to put that together, but it would be a good idea. Yeah.
But it's also tough to create an org chart where we share staff in so many places across the district. But we can talk more about it. But yep.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I think it's good feedback. And one of the things that we're talking about with our new website is developing directories for schools with, names and email addresses with possibly pictures associated as well. So and you can figure out not only who your child's classroom teacher is, but who other faculty members are in the building as well. So, yes. Yep. So the short answer is absolutely. There's schedules at every levels. You know, I said this when we were talking about special education, but it's not just special education. We're looking K through 12 at our schedules at every level. We're looking at it at the elementary level. We're looking at the middle school schedule, and we're doing a lot of work right now on the middle school schedule. But we're also talking about the high school schedule as well. You know, and you know, one of the questions that came up in our school committee meeting earlier in the fall in October was just a conversation about late start, right? So there's a lot to talk about in regard to schedule. But specifically in regard to your question around elementary scheduling, I think it's one of the most important things that we're going to be doing in the next 3 months. Yeah. Okay. So we're working on our middle school schedule now, and our high school schedule. There's some more to follow there. I think that there's more information to follow there. Yeah. So, other questions or anything that we might not maybe haven't addressed, Andy?
Just want to put in a small plug for sustainability. There's been a lot of great initiatives started this year and last year. For folks that don't know, Quality Green was all the elementary schools are now composting and doing food rescue and recycling in cafeterias, which is just phenomenal. And I think there's things going on with different centers of way with recycling in Calvin, and there's recycling going to the high school. But I think over time, there's some very small expenditures that I think put a placeholder in that you'll consider for the budget as to how to support that through whether it's hauling fees or additional infrastructure that's needed to support that. That's my input on sustainability. It's great, the kids are really excited about it. We just need to do a little bit to help continue to support that over time.
I think you may have a few advocates that have already advocated for it in the budget process. Yes. Learn anywhere. That's correct. The Commissioner of Education, it's his purview. He's in charge of public education in the state. Correct. So we were I think the first district to come out with kind of learn anywhere around snow days, but and a number of our surrounding districts have adopted it as well. But the commissioner has come out and has just said, you know, we were part of the study group that looked at and advocated for keeping it. But I think that they felt like some districts just rushed into this too quickly and really weren't doing it as well as they could or should. So I think his position was, this just feels like too much, so I'm going to ask that we kind of pull back on this. So it's a statewide decision that affects all public schools that might have been participating in programs. Yes? So you can advocate, and I hope that they do this, because I feel like there's a lot of good learning that was taking place in figuring out how to support students, and I also think that it's the future, right? And so, you know, it's the direction that we're going, and kids are developing a lot of nice skills in terms of self-regulation and choice.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, in terms of like it coming out from DESE, which is statewide, and the commissioner makes statewide decisions. I think one of the things that we came up with, you know, that we talked a lot about was equity and access. And so I think when you have, I think for Wakefield, I agree, had done a nice job, put a lot of work and effort into making a quality program. But when you think about other cities in the district where, you know, you have kids that need to come to school, they need to come to school to have basic needs met. They're not looking to have less days in school. So I think that was like, when you look at statewide, what's good for all. It's hard to say that it can work for Wakefield but not work for a less advantaged town. So I think that, and that's just my just in part of researching the program and hearing about the decision. And one of the things that we were working on in the Learn Anywhere committee last year was addressing just equity and access within our own district. So.
Yes.
For building the calendar for next year? So we're currently working on the calendar for next year with the understanding that Learn Anywhere is not going to be a part of that. And we build in 5 days, automatically to the calendar. So right now, I mean, yes, there's talks, especially this year, Labor Day is really late, so it makes it a little bit more complicated. So I think that's part of our overall discussions around what might possibly occur before Labor Day and what, students historically have always gone back after Labor Day in Wakefield. So I think that's just something that we need to continue to talk about.
But if I heard your question in regard to the net positive, negative, it's a net neutral because it's a work day for all of our bargaining, right? And so it's a work day, right? And so it was budgeted for before, it will be budgeted for after, right? I guess we haven't costed out heating and cooling, but in terms of labor, which is our biggest cost driver, I think it's a net neutral. Any other questions? I think people are starting to run. If you have questions and you'd like to come up, we'd like to give people an opportunity to go if you need to. It looks like a lot of people do. But we'll stay and answer any questions that you might have. And thank you very much for coming. If there's something that you need to address, I would urge you to either send us an email or give us a call directly. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. So.